The glow of the laptop screen was the only light in Rihanna's living room, casting long, lonely shadows across the worn floral upholstery of her sofa. It was 11:42 p.m. on a Tuesday. On the screen, a green checkmark pulsed next to a string of bold black numbers. $50,000. Transfer successful. Rihanna leaned back, releasing a breath she felt she had been holding for 40 years. She looked down at her hands resting in her lap. They were the hands of a woman who had worked the night shift at Grady Memorial Hospital for 4 decades. The skin was dry from thousands of mandatory scrub downs, the knuckles slightly swollen with the early whispers of arthritis, the nails kept short and practical. These hands had held the fading pulses of strangers, had changed countless bedpans, and had gripped the steering wheel of a reliable but aging Honda Civic through torrential Atlanta thunderstorms just to make it to a shift on time. But most importantly, these hands had raised Marcus. When her husband, David, passed away from a sudden aneurysm when Marcus was barely 4 years old, Rihanna's world had narrowed down to 2 things: survival and her son. She had worked doubles, skipped meals, and worn the same winter coat for 12 years, so Marcus could have the pristine white sneakers he wanted for middle school, the expensive baseball camp in high school, and the out-of-state college tuition that ensured he would never have to work a night shift in his life. And she had succeeded. Marcus was a regional manager for a logistics firm now, married to Chloe, and a father to Rihanna's entire universe, her 6-year-old granddaughter, Maya. The $50,000 she had just wired into Marcus and Chloe's joint account wasn't just cash. It was the physical manifestation of her family's history. It was the money from the sale of 12 acres of timberland in Macon, Georgia, land her grandfather had purchased penny by penny during the Jim Crow era. It was land meant to be a legacy. Selling it had felt like carving out a piece of her own heart, but the promise Marcus had made the sacrifice feel like a beautiful culmination of her life's work. "Mom," Marcus had said 3 weeks ago, sitting at her chipped Formica kitchen table, his eyes earnest and pleading. "Chloe and I found the perfect house in Alpharetta. It's in the best school district for Maya, but the down payment is steep. If we had your help, we could afford the model with the in-law suite on the first floor. It has its own entrance, a little kitchenette, a walk-in shower. You could sell this old place, move in with us, and you'd never have to worry about climbing stairs or being alone again. You could see Maya every single day." The thought of waking up to the sound of Maya's giggles, of baking peach cobbler in a kitchen filled with family, of finally resting her weary bones in the safety of her son's home, it had been intoxicating. It was the dream every mother who had sacrificed everything prayed for: to be needed, to be included, and to be taken care of in the twilight of her life. So she signed the deed to the Macon land over to a developer, watched the timber get cleared in her mind's eye, and wired the exact amount they needed for the down payment. A few days after the transfer, the phone rang. The caller ID flashed a picture of Chloe, impeccably contoured and smiling perfectly into the camera. "Mama Ree!" Chloe's voice flowed through the speaker, dripping with a weaponized sweetness that always set Rihanna's teeth slightly on edge. Chloe was a woman in her early 30s who worshipped at the altar of social media aesthetics. Everything about her life, from her beige-toned living room to her child's organic linen wardrobe, was curated for an audience of strangers. "Hello, Chloe, baby. How are the house preparations coming along?" Rihanna asked, adjusting her reading glasses. "Oh, it's just a whirlwind, Mama Ree. So stressful. Listen, the contractors are here looking at the fixtures for the first floor, specifically your suite." Chloe's voice lowered conspiratorially. "Marcus and I were looking at the budget, and with the closing costs, things are just so tight. We found this stunning brushed brass vanity and a rainfall shower head. I know how much your joints ache, and I just thought, Mama Ree deserves a spa experience in her new bathroom. But Marcus said we have to settle for the basic builder-grade plastic." Rihanna's heart softened. The girl could be pretentious, but she was thinking of her comfort. "Oh, honey, I don't need anything fancy. Basic is fine." "No!" Chloe insisted, feigning outrage. "You are the matriarch of this family. I won't have you in a plastic shower. Look, if you could just let me put this on your Chase Sapphire card, just for the points, we'll pay you right back when Marcus's quarterly bonus hits next month. It's only about $2,000 for the whole spa setup." Rihanna hesitated. She was living on a fixed pension now. $2,000 was her grocery and utility budget for the next 2 months. But then she pictured the rainfall shower soothing her aching shoulders. She pictured Chloe's disappointed face, and Marcus feeling like he had failed to provide for his mother. "All right, Chloe, go ahead, but just this once. I need to be careful with my limits." "You are an absolute angel, Mama Rai. Maya says thank you. We love you." The phone clicked off. 3 days later, Rihanna checked her banking app. The charge wasn't from a hardware store or a bathroom fixture outlet. It was from a high-end designer furniture boutique in Buckhead. The total was $2,450. When Rihanna casually brought it up to Marcus during a Sunday phone call, he had sounded exhausted and irritable. "Mom, please. Chloe is handling the interior design. It's probably a boutique that sells custom fixtures. Don't micromanage her. She's under a lot of pressure making this house perfect for all of us." Rihanna swallowed the lump in her throat and apologized. She started eating oatmeal for dinner 3 times a week to offset the credit card bill. She told herself it was just the stress of the move. She told herself her son loved her. The day Marcus and Chloe finally closed on the Alpharetta house and began moving their belongings, Rihanna woke up at 5 a.m. She spent 3 hours in the kitchen preparing a massive spread: baked ziti, a tray of cornbread, a roast chicken, and Maya's favorite double chocolate brownies. Moving was exhausting work, and she wanted to be there, wiping down counters and making sure her family was fed. She packed the food into the trunk of her Civic and dialed Marcus to ask for the gate code to the new community. The phone rang 6 times before he answered. Voices and loud music echoed in the background. "Hey, Mom," Marcus said, his voice clipped. "Baby, I've got a trunk full of food. I'm ready to come over and help you all unpack. Just give me the gate code." There was a heavy pause on the line, the kind of silence that made the hairs on the back of Rihanna's neck stand up. "Actually, Mom, today isn't a good day." Rihanna stopped halfway to the driver's side door, her hand hovering over the handle. "What do you mean? You're moving today. I want to see the house. I want to see my suite." I know, Marcus sighed, sounding more like an annoyed teenager than a grown man. "But the movers are everywhere. It's total chaos, and the dust is terrible. Chloe is having a meltdown because the painters messed up the trim in the living room. It's not safe for you to be walking around with boxes everywhere. You might trip." "Marcus, I navigated trauma wards during multi-car pileups. I can handle a few cardboard boxes." "Mom, please." His voice dropped into a low, pleading register that he always used when he wanted her to back down. "Don't make this harder than it is. Chloe wants the house to be perfect before you see it. We want to do a proper reveal for you. Just stay home. Relax. We'll have you over for a big dinner next weekend, okay?" Rihanna looked back at the foil-covered trays sitting on the back seat of her car. A profound, heavy chill settled in her chest. "What about the food I made for Maya?" "We ordered sushi. Look, I gotta go. The couch is stuck in the doorway. Love you, Mom." The line went dead. Rihanna stood in her driveway for a long time. The Georgia heat pressed down on her shoulders, but she felt entirely cold. She carried the heavy trays back inside, one by one. She sat at her small kitchen table and ate a piece of cornbread that tasted like ash. For the next 2 weeks, the excuses piled up like autumn leaves. "The plumbing in your bathroom isn't finished yet, Mama Ree. Maya has a nasty cold. We don't want you catching it. We have a neighborhood association meeting this weekend." Every time she asked when she could start packing her own house to move into the suite she had paid for, the answer was always a variation of, "Soon, Mom, we're just working out the kinks." It was a quiet Friday evening, the kind of quiet that echoed. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked rhythmically, a stark reminder of the empty house. Rihanna sat in her worn armchair, a cup of chamomile tea cooling on the side table, her iPad resting in her lap. She was scrolling through Facebook, looking at photos of her church friends' grandchildren, trying to fill the void of missing Maya. A notification dropped down from the top of the screen. "At Chloe Aesthetic is live on Instagram. Come tour our dream home." Rihanna's heart gave a little flutter. If they wouldn't let her come over yet, at least she could get a glimpse of the place she had helped them buy. She tapped the notification. The screen filled with Chloe's face. Her makeup was flawless, her hair styled in effortless, expensive waves. She was holding a stabilizing gimbal, walking through a sprawling, sunlit foyer with soaring ceilings and light oak floors. "Hi, guys. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for joining," Chloe squealed, reading the comments scrolling up the screen. "Yes, we finally moved in. It has been an absolute nightmare of a process, but Marcus and I are so incredibly blessed." Rihanna smiled proudly, despite the lingering hurt from the past few weeks. It really was a beautiful home. Let me show you the chef's kitchen first, Chloe said, panning the camera to show off acres of pristine white quartz countertops and a massive stainless steel refrigerator. I literally cried when I saw this island. It's perfect for entertaining. Rihanna watched closely, trying to orient herself in the layout Marcus had described. The kitchen is in the back, so my suite must be down the hall to the left, she thought. Chloe moved gracefully through the open-concept living room, pointing out the minimalist furniture. Rihanna recognized the $2,450 charge on her credit card. It wasn't a brushed brass bathroom vanity. It was a pair of aggressively modern sculptural accent chairs sitting in the corner of the living room, completely unsuited for anyone with back pain. Rihanna swallowed hard, dismissing the sting. She just borrowed the card. She'll pay it back, Rihanna lied to herself. Okay, babes, now for the pièce de résistance, Chloe said, her voice breathy with excitement. She walked down a wide hallway toward a set of beautiful, heavy double doors. This was originally marketed as an in-law suite, but Marcus and I had a completely different vision. Are you ready? Rihanna leaned forward, her breath hitching. My room. Chloe pushed open the double doors. Rihanna's tea mug slipped slightly in her grip, rattling against the saucer. It was not a bedroom. There was no bed. There was no kitchenette. There was no space for a grandmother to rest her tired bones. The massive room had been entirely gutted and transformed. Custom, floor-to-ceiling white cabinetry lined every wall, illuminated by built-in LED strips. Behind glass doors sat dozens of designer handbags, arranged by color like a museum exhibit. In the center of the room was a massive velvet-tufted island with glass drawers displaying jewelry and sunglasses. In the corner by the large window overlooking the yard, the window Rihanna had imagined watching Maya play through, sat a professional vlogging setup, a sleek desk, an oversized ring light, and a plush pink chair. Welcome to my sanctuary, Chloe squealed, spinning around with the camera. A custom-built luxury walk-in closet and creator studio. We had the contractors rip out the kitchenette and the accessible shower to make room for my shoe display. I mean, look at these shelves. It's giving Beverly Hills, right? Rihanna stared at the screen. The air in her lungs evaporated. She felt physically struck, a sharp, cold pain radiating from her chest down to her fingertips. We had the contractors rip out the kitchenette, the $50,000, the timberland, her grandfather's legacy. It hadn't bought her a home. It had bought her daughter-in-law a closet for her purses. On the screen, comments were flying by. OMG goals! So aesthetic! Wait, didn't you say your mother-in-law helped buy the house? Is she living there? Rihanna saw the comment. She watched Chloe's eyes dart to the screen, reading it. She watched the slight, almost imperceptible tightening of Chloe's jaw before the perfect, camera-ready smile returned. Chloe let out a light, musical laugh. Oh, bless her heart, no, guys. Marcus's mom is very set in her ways. She's older, and she absolutely loves her little old house in the city. Bringing an elderly woman into this kind of fast-paced, modern, upscale neighborhood, it would just be so overwhelming and cruel to her. Plus, it would totally ruin the vibe of our family dynamic. We need our own space to thrive. So this space was just begging to be a creator studio instead. Rihanna sat frozen in the silence of her living room. The video continued to play, Chloe babbling on about the lighting fixtures, but Rihanna couldn't hear the words anymore. The only sound was the rushing of blood in her own ears. Overwhelming and cruel. Ruin the vibe. Her little old house. The truth hit her not like a sudden blow, but like a slow, creeping poison that had finally reached her heart. They had never intended to let her live there. Marcus had sat at her table, looked her dead in the eye, and lied to her face just to get his hands on her inheritance. He had sold out his own mother's future so his wife could have a backdrop for her Instagram photos. Rihanna didn't cry. The sorrow had bypassed tears and settled into something much deeper, much colder. She looked down at her hands again. The calloused, tired hands that had washed Marcus's face, that had clutched the steering wheel to the hospital, that had signed away the deed to the Macon land. For 3 years, she had felt a vague sense of unease, a constant low-level anxiety that she was doing something wrong, that she wasn't doing enough for them. She had walked on eggshells, eager to please, eager to buy their affection, hoping for a crumb of respect. She pressed the power button on her iPad. The screen went black, cutting off Chloe's smiling face. The grandfather clock ticked loudly in the hallway. Rihanna stood up slowly. Her joints ached, her back was stiff, but her mind was clearer than it had been in a decade. She walked into her bedroom and opened the bottom drawer of her dresser. From beneath a stack of old winter sweaters, she pulled out a heavy, fireproof lockbox. She opened it and took out a thick manila folder. Inside were her bank statements, the wire transfer receipts, the Chase Sapphire credit card bills, and the legal documents from the sale of the land. She carried the folder to the dining room table and spread the papers out under the harsh overhead light. She was 68 years old. She was a black woman from the South who had survived the loss of a husband, the grueling wards of a city hospital, and the sheer terror of raising a black boy into a man in America. She had spent a lifetime giving her strength away so others could stand tall. "Set in my ways," Rihanna whispered to the empty room, her voice a low, gravelly rasp. She picked up a red pen and began to circle the charges on the credit card statement. The designer chairs, the organic groceries they had asked her to pick up, the hundreds of dollars in emergencies that had miraculously disappeared. She calculated the total. It was a staggering number, a number that represented her life's blood, siphoned off by a son who saw her as an ATM and a daughter-in-law who saw her as a social liability. A cold, unfamiliar energy began to hum beneath Rihanna's skin. It wasn't the frantic, desperate energy of a mother trying to save her child. It was the calculated, precise energy of a woman who had realized she was the only one left to save herself. Marcus and Chloe thought they had manipulated a tired, lonely old woman. They thought she would cry, complain, and eventually accept her banishment to her little old house while continuing to foot the bill for their luxurious lifestyle. They had forgotten one crucial detail. Rihanna had spent 40 years in the trauma unit. She knew how to amputate a dying limb to save the rest of the body. And as she looked at the $50,000 transfer receipt, she realized that her son had become a gangrene she could no longer afford to carry. The illusion of her family was dead. It was time to deal with the reality. And the reality was going to cost them everything. The morning sun had barely crested the Georgia pines when Rihanna backed her aging Honda Civic out of the driveway. The drive from her modest, quiet neighborhood in Atlanta to the sprawling, manicured subdivisions of Alpharetta took 45 minutes, but to Rihanna, it felt like crossing into a different dimension. Here, the asphalt was impossibly black, the lawns were a uniform, chemically treated green, and the houses loomed like fortresses of modern wealth. When she reached the gated entrance of Marcus and Chloe's new community, the enclave at Whispering Oaks, she didn't bother looking for their name on the call box. She knew they wouldn't answer. Instead, she pulled over to the shoulder and waited 10 minutes until a massive landscaping truck pulled up to the gates. As the iron bars swung open, Rihanna hit the gas, slipping her small sedan through just before they closed. She parked across the street from their house. It was a stunning structure of white brick and dark wood accents, practically glowing in the morning light. A brand new luxury SUV sat in the driveway. Rihanna turned off the ignition, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned an ashen gray. She took a deep breath, the kind she used to take before walking into a code blue in the ICU. Then she stepped out of the car. She didn't knock. She pressed the doorbell, which chimed a soft melodic tune that felt entirely out of place with the thunder roaring in her chest. A minute later, the heavy oak door swung open. Marcus stood there, dressed in crisp navy chinos and a fitted quarter-zip sweater, holding a steaming mug of espresso. The color drained from his face the moment he saw her. He looked over her shoulder, instinctively checking to see if any of his new, affluent neighbors were watching his mother stand on his porch in her sensible walking shoes and 10-year-old cardigan. "Mom?" he stammered, his hand gripping the doorframe as if to physically block her from stepping inside. "What are you doing here? It's barely 8 in the morning. You didn't call." "Good morning, Marcus," Rihanna said, her voice eerily calm. She didn't raise her pitch. She didn't yell. "I didn't think I needed an appointment to visit the house my grandfather's land paid for. Let me in." Marcus shifted his weight, his eyes darting nervously toward the curved staircase behind him. "Chloe is still sleeping, Mom, and Maya is getting ready for school. It's really chaotic right now." "I am not here to see Chloe. I am here to see my room." Before he could offer another excuse, Rihanna stepped forward, forcing Marcus to step back. She walked into the grand foyer. It smelled of expensive vanilla diffusers and fresh paint. It was beautiful, sterile, and utterly devoid of warmth. She didn't pause to admire the soaring ceilings. She turned left, heading straight down the wide hallway she had memorized from the Instagram live stream the night before. Mom, wait! Marcus set his mug down on a console table with a sharp clatter and hurried after her. Mom, listen to me. You don't understand the timeline. Rihanna pushed open the heavy double doors. Seeing it on a screen was one thing. Standing in the center of the room was another. The LED lights flickered on automatically, illuminating the pristine white shelving, the rows of designer shoes, and the velvet-tufted island. The space where her bed was supposed to be was occupied by a sprawling vanity. The corner where she had imagined setting up her sewing machine was dominated by a ring light and a tripod. She stood in silence. The air in the room felt thin, suffocating. Mom, please, Marcus said, hovering in the doorway, his voice dripping with an agonizing, practiced patience. I know how this looks, but it's a misunderstanding. Rihanna turned slowly to face her son, the boy who used to hide behind her legs when it thundered, the man who was now standing in a room bought with her sweat, lying to her face. Explain the misunderstanding, Marcus, she said softly. Explain how the accessible shower became a display case for Jimmy Choo's. Marcus ran a hand over his face, adopting the exhausted posture of a man burdened by an unreasonable parent. The plumbing failed the initial inspection, Mom. The foundation slab on this side of the house couldn't support the drainage required for an accessible shower without another $20,000 in renovations. We didn't have the money. And Chloe got a huge brand deal. She needed a dedicated studio space immediately to generate income to help pay the mortgage. The mortgage, Rihanna repeated, the word tasting like bile. I gave you $50,000 to secure a loan that wouldn't drown you, specifically so this room could be built. And we appreciate it. We really do. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice into a soothing, patronizing tone. But things change. Real estate is complicated. We always said the plan was for you to move in eventually. Next year, maybe the year after. We're going to finish the basement for you. It'll be even bigger than this room. A basement, Rihanna stated. You want to put a 68-year-old woman with arthritic knees in a basement after taking her inheritance. Mom, you're getting worked up over nothing, Marcus sighed, crossing his arms. He was employing the classic tactic of shifting the blame, making her reaction the problem rather than his betrayal. You're misremembering the timeline we discussed. You've been so stressed lately, you're getting things confused. We never promised you this room on day one. You have your own house. You love your house. Why are you trying to manufacture drama where there is none? Manufacturing drama. Confused. The words hit Rihanna with the precision of a scalpel. He wasn't just lying. He was gaslighting her. He was trying to rewrite history and relying on the stereotype of an aging, forgetful mother to make himself the victim. I see, Rihanna said quietly. She looked around the closet one last time, burning the image into her memory. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. Crying was a currency she was no longer willing to spend on him. I understand perfectly now, Marcus. She walked past him, her spine straight, her steps measured. As she reached the front door, Marcus called out, sounding relieved that the confrontation was ending so quickly. I'll call you this weekend, Mom. We'll figure out a time for you to come have dinner and see Maya, okay? Rihanna didn't answer. She let the heavy oak door click shut behind her. By noon, Rihanna was sitting at her chipped kitchen table back in Atlanta. The manila folder was open. She had spent the last 2 hours on the phone with a Chase Bank representative, requesting the detailed vendor codes for every charge on her credit card from the last 3 months. She was a nurse. For 40 years, she had read complex medical charts, tracked medication dosages down to the milligram, and identified anomalies in blood work that doctors had missed. She knew how to audit. And she was currently auditing her son's life. The representative had been helpful, walking her through the merchant category codes. The truth, laid out in black ink on her notepad, was uglier than the closet. The $2,450 charge wasn't for custom bathroom fixtures or even the modern accent chairs she had seen in the living room. The vendor code belonged to a boutique public relations agency in Buckhead that specialized in social media growth and verification for aspiring influencers. Chloe hadn't bought furniture with Rihanna's credit card. She had bought followers and a PR campaign. There were other things, too. Groceries from an artisanal organic market that totaled $400 a week. A charge for a medical emergency for Maya that Marcus had tearfully begged for 2 months ago, claiming insurance wouldn't cover a specialist pediatrician. The merchant code revealed it was a luxury med spa in Sandy Springs. Botox and dermal fillers, paid for by the woman eating oatmeal for dinner. Rihanna closed her eyes. The sheer audacity of it took her breath away. They hadn't just used her. They had bled her with surgical precision, exploiting her love for her grandchild and her desperate desire to keep her family close. They had looked at a lifetime of maternal sacrifice and seen nothing but a line of credit. She picked up her phone and opened her banking app. With 3 deliberate taps, she locked the Chase Sapphire card. Then she navigated to the joint checking account she had opened with Marcus years ago for emergencies, the one she deposited $300 into every month to help with Maya's ballet lessons. She transferred the entire balance back into her primary account and removed her name from the joint ledger. She set the phone down. The house was painfully silent. She waited. It took less than 4 hours. At 4:15 p.m., the phone vibrated against the table. It wasn't Marcus. It was Chloe. Rihanna let it ring 4 times before answering. "Hello, Chloe." "Mama Ree." Chloe's voice was strained, the usual weaponized sweetness struggling to cover a sharp edge of panic. "Hi, so I'm at the grocery store, and the most embarrassing thing just happened. The Chase card declined? I think the bank might have put a fraud alert on it because of the move. Could you call them and lift it? I have a cart full of Maya's organic snacks." "There is no fraud alert, Chloe," Rihanna said, her voice smooth and unbothered. "I locked the card, and I will be canceling it on Monday." Dead silence on the other end of the line. The background noise of the grocery store seemed to amplify. "I don't understand," Chloe finally said, her tone dropping an octave, abandoning the sweet daughter-in-law persona entirely. "Marcus said you came by this morning and threw a fit about the closet. Are you seriously throwing a tantrum and cutting us off over a room, after everything we do to include you?" "You spent $2,450 on a PR agency, Chloe," Rihanna replied, ignoring the insult. "You spent $800 on lip fillers under the guise of Maya's medical bills. The card is closed. You and Marcus will need to fund your own lifestyle from now on." "You went through my transactions?" Chloe's voice rose, shrill and indignant. "That is a massive invasion of privacy. We are building a brand, Rihanna. It takes investment to build a future for your granddaughter. But clearly you don't care about Maya's future if you're willing to sabotage us over a petty misunderstanding." "Do not use my granddaughter as a shield for your vanity," Rihanna warned, a low rumble of genuine anger finally cracking through her calm exterior. "I gave you my grandfather's land. I am done giving." "Fine," Chloe snapped, the mask completely off. "If you want to be selfish, be selfish. But actions have consequences, Mama Ree." "What does that mean?" "It means," Chloe said, her voice turning dangerously soft and calculated, "that Maya's schedule is getting incredibly busy. Between her elite preschool and her extracurriculars, we just aren't going to have time for weekend visits. Furthermore, Marcus and I have been talking. Your behavior lately, showing up unannounced, having paranoid delusions about where our money is going, forgetting that we agreed you'd move into the basement next year. It's deeply concerning." Rihanna gripped the edge of the table. "I am not delusional, Chloe. Do not play this game with me." "We just have to put Maya's safety first," Chloe continued seamlessly, as if she were reading from a script. "We can't have her around someone who is acting erratic and exhibiting signs of cognitive decline. It's just not a safe environment for a child. We think you need to see a doctor, Rihanna. Until you get a psychological evaluation and show us you're stable, we're going to have to severely limit your contact with Maya." The dial tone buzzed in Rihanna's ear. Chloe had hung up. Rihanna sat frozen in the fading afternoon light. The cruelty of the tactic was breathtaking. Chloe wasn't just cutting off contact. She was laying the groundwork for a narrative. She was weaponizing Maya, turning the child into a hostage to force Rihanna back into submission. And worse, she was planting the seed that Rihanna was losing her mind. If Rihanna fought back, she was erratic. If she complained about the stolen money, she was paranoid and confused. They were attempting to strip away the only things she had left, her sanity, her reputation, and her granddaughter. A tear finally escaped, tracing a hot path down Rihanna's cheek. It was a tear of profound grief for the family she thought she had. But as she wiped it away with the back of her calloused hand, the grief crystallized into something hard, sharp, and unbreakable. They thought she was a fragile old woman who would crumble under the threat of isolation. They thought the fear of losing Maya would force her to open her wallet and apologize for being wronged. They were about to learn that a mother's love is unconditional, but a woman's dignity is not. Rihanna picked up her phone, scrolled past her family contacts, and dialed a number she hadn't called in years. "Beatrice," Rihanna said when her old friend answered. "It's Rihanna. I need to ask you a favor. I need to know the name of the best elder law attorney your firm used to work with. Yes, right now. We have a war to plan." Beatrice arrived at Rihanna's house the next morning carrying a leather tote bag heavy with legal pads, an accordion file, and the fierce, no-nonsense energy she had maintained since their days pledging Alpha Kappa Alpha at Spelman College 45 years ago. Following closely behind her was a tall, sharply dressed man with silvering hair at his temples. "Rihanna, this is Elias Vance," Beatrice said, not bothering with pleasantries as she dropped her bag onto the dining room table. He was the senior partner at the firm before he retired to do pro bono elder advocacy. "Elias, this is my sister Rihanna, and her son is trying to bury her alive." Elias offered a warm, steadying hand. "It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Richter. Beatrice has told me everything." For the next 3 hours, Rihanna's dining room became a war room. The table was covered in highlighters, bank statements, the $50,000 wire transfer receipt, and printed screenshots of Chloe's Instagram Live. Rihanna also handed Elias her phone, letting him read the text messages where Marcus dismissed her concerns and the chilling final message from Chloe threatening to keep Maya away unless Rihanna submitted to a psychological evaluation. Elias read the texts, his jaw tightening. He took off his reading glasses and looked at Rihanna with grave professional sympathy. "Mrs. Richter, I need to be brutally honest with you," Elias said, his voice quiet but firm. "What your daughter-in-law said about your cognitive decline isn't just an insult. It is a legal strategy. It's textbook elder financial abuse." Rihanna felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. "A strategy for what?" "To establish a paper trail," Elias explained, tapping the printed texts. "Right now you are completely independent and competent, but by claiming you are acting erratic and paranoid, they are laying the groundwork to petition a court for guardianship or to coerce you into signing a durable power of attorney. If they get either of those, Marcus gains absolute legal control over your bank accounts, your pension, and the deed to this house. They've drained your cash. Now they are coming for your assets." Beatrice scoffed, crossing her arms. "They think because she's a 68-year-old widow, she's just going to roll over and hand them the keys to her life." "They are under immense financial pressure," Elias continued. "People who live beyond their means, especially those obsessed with public image, become desperate when the well runs dry. They will try to force your hand soon. They need collateral to sustain their lifestyle. They will likely try to corner you, isolate you, and use your granddaughter as leverage to make you sign something." Rihanna looked down at the grain of the wooden table. This table where Marcus had done his elementary school homework. This table where they had eaten Thanksgiving dinners. Now it was the staging ground for a legal battle against him. The heartbreak threatened to swallow her whole, but 40 years in the trauma ward had taught her how to compartmentalize. You cannot save the patient if you are shaking. Right now, the patient was her own future. "So," Rihanna said, lifting her chin, her dark eyes flashing with a cold, steady fire. "How do we amputate?" The bait was cast on Thursday afternoon. Rihanna's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Mom, I'm so sorry about how things escalated the other day." Chloe was just stressed. "We want to make it right. We miss you. Maya misses her Mama Rai. Can we come over for Sunday dinner? Just the family. We need to talk." Rihanna stared at the screen. A week ago, a text like that would have sent her rushing to the grocery store, eager to cook a massive feast, desperate to smooth over the rough edges of their relationship. Now she saw the text for exactly what Elias said it would be. An ambush. She typed her reply. "Sunday at 6 p.m. is fine. I'll make a roast." When Sunday evening arrived, the house smelled of rosemary, garlic, and slow-roasted beef. It was the scent of maternal comfort, a perfect, deceptive backdrop for the evening. Rihanna wore a simple, elegant navy dress, a string of pearls David had given her on their 10th anniversary, and a touch of red lipstick. She looked regal. She looked like a woman in complete command of her faculties. At exactly 6 p.m., the doorbell rang. Rihanna opened the door. Marcus stood on the porch, wearing a suit without a tie, looking pale and nervous. Chloe stood next to him, wearing a modest beige cashmere sweater, holding a bouquet of grocery store tulips. Her smile was tight, her eyes darting around the hallway. but Rihanna's gaze immediately dropped. Maya wasn't there. "Where is my granddaughter?" Rihanna asked, not moving to let them in. "Oh, Mama Ree, we're so sorry," Chloe said, feigning a pout. "Maya spiked a little fever this afternoon. We had to leave her with the sitter. But she made you a drawing." It was a lie. The sitter was likely booked days in advance. Maya was the carrot they had dangled to get in the door, and now they had pulled it away to maintain control. Before Rihanna could respond, a man stepped out from the shadows behind Marcus. He was a white man in his early 50s, wearing a sharp, expensive gray suit and carrying a slim leather briefcase. He had the slick, overly polished demeanor of a luxury car salesman. "Mom," Marcus cleared his throat, refusing to meet her eyes. "This is Gregory Sterling. He's a family wealth counselor and mediator. We brought him to help us have a productive, healthy conversation." Rihanna looked at the man, then at her son. They had brought a stranger into her sanctuary to intimidate her. The audacity was almost impressive. "A mediator," Rihanna said smoothly. "How formal. Come in." She led them into the dining room. The table was set for 3, but Rihanna didn't offer to get another plate. She gestured for them to sit. Marcus and Chloe took the seats opposite her, while the stranger, Mr. Sterling, confidently pulled up a chair at the head of the table, the seat that used to be David's. Rihanna let the disrespect slide. It would only make the trap snap shut harder. "Mrs. Richter," Mr. Sterling began, folding his hands on the table and using a slow, loud, syrupy voice, the universal tone used to patronize the elderly. "Marcus and Chloe love you very much. They are deeply concerned about the stress you've been under lately. We understand you've been having some episodes of confusion regarding your finances." "Episodes of confusion," Rihanna repeated, pouring herself a glass of ice water. "Is that what we're calling it?" Chloe reached across the table, trying to place her perfectly manicured hand over Rihanna's. Rihanna subtly pulled her hand back. "Mama Ree," Chloe said softly, playing the wounded angel perfectly. "You locked your credit card. You took your name off the emergency account. You came to our house and caused a scene over a closet. We're worried about your mental health. We don't want you burdening yourself with the stress of managing property and bills at your age. We just want to protect you." "Protect me," Rihanna said. "From what?" "From making irrational decisions," Mr. Sterling interjected smoothly. He snapped the latches of his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of legal documents with little colored tabs sticking out of the pages. "Mrs. Richter, to ensure your long-term care and to protect your assets from being mismanaged if your cognitive state continues to decline, we have prepared a family asset consolidation plan. It is a very standard procedure." Rihanna looked at the papers. "And what does this standard procedure entail?" "It's very simple," Sterling smiled, handing her a silver pen. "It transfers the deed of this house into a family trust managed by Marcus. It also grants him a durable power of attorney, allowing him to manage your bank accounts and medical decisions. In return, Marcus and Chloe will use the equity of this house to secure a business loan for Chloe's brand, which will generate passive income to pay for any in-home nursing care you might need in the future." The sheer violence of the proposition hung in the air. They wanted her house. They wanted her pension. They wanted to strip her of her legal autonomy, mortgage the roof over her head to fund Chloe's Instagram lifestyle, and legally bind her hands so she could never fight back. Rihanna looked at Marcus. He was staring intensely at a knot in the wood of the dining table, his shoulders hunched. "Marcus," Rihanna said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was heavy with the profound, suffocating grief of a mother recognizing she had raised a coward. "Look at me." Marcus slowly lifted his eyes. They were wide and fearful. "Is this your condition for letting me see Maya?" Rihanna asked. "Rihanna, I sign away my house, my money, and my freedom, or I lose my granddaughter?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Mom, it's for the best. You're getting older. You need us to manage things. We're a team." Chloe pushed the documents closer to Rihanna. "Just sign right there by the yellow tab, Mama Ree. Then we can eat this delicious roast, and we'll bring Maya over tomorrow. I promise." Rihanna picked up the silver pen. She held the cold metal between her fingers, feeling its weight. The room was dead silent. Chloe's eyes were practically glowing with greedy anticipation. Sterling wore a smug, victorious smirk. Rihanna set the pen down on the table with a sharp clack. "You brought a shark into my home," Rihanna said, her voice dropping into a register of absolute, chilling authority. "But you forgot, Marcus. I spent 40 years in a city trauma center. I swim in blood. I don't fear sharks. Rihanna reached under the table and pressed a small wireless doorbell button she had taped to the underside of the wood that morning. A chime echoed from the back hallway. The heavy oak doors separating the dining room from the kitchen slid open. Beatrice stepped out, holding a glowing iPad, her face set in a furious glare. Behind her stepped Elias Vance, wearing a tailored three-piece suit, exuding the terrifying calm of a courtroom veteran. Chloe gasped, jumping in her seat. Sterling's smug smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of wild confusion. "Good evening," Elias said, walking up to the table. He didn't look at Marcus or Chloe. He locked eyes with the man at the head of the table. "I am Elias Vance, legal counsel for Mrs. Richter, and you must be Mr. Sterling." Sterling stood up quickly, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. Yes, I'm facilitating a family agreement." Elias picked up the stack of documents Sterling had placed in front of Rihanna. He flipped through them, his eyes scanning the legalese with rapid precision. He let out a low, humorless chuckle. "Mr. Sterling," Elias said softly, "are you a licensed attorney in the state of Georgia?" Sterling's Adam's apple bobbed. "I am a wealth counselor, a consultant." "So you are practicing law without a license," Elias stated, dropping the papers back onto the table as if they were contaminated. "Drafting a predatory power of attorney and a property transfer deed for a senior citizen under the fraudulent guise of a wellness check. That is a felony in this state. Beatrice, did you get all of that on the recording?" "Crystal clear," Beatrice said, tapping the screen of her iPad. "Audio and video, from the moment he threatened her with her granddaughter." Chloe's face drained of all color, the heavy contouring on her cheeks suddenly looking stark and clownish. "Recording? You can't record us? That's illegal." "In Georgia, only one party needs to consent to a recording," Elias corrected sharply. "Mrs. Richter consented in her own home. Now let's talk about the $50,000 wire fraud, shall we?" Elias opened his own briefcase and pulled out the thick manila folder Rihanna and Beatrice had prepared. He slammed it down on the table right in front of Marcus. $50,000 wired under the explicit documented promise of a residential addition for my client, Elias said, his voice booming in the small room. Funds that were misappropriated to build a vanity closet, pay a public relations firm, and fund cosmetic procedures. We have the vendor codes, Mrs. Richter's credit card statements, and the text messages. "Mom," Marcus whispered, his voice trembling. He looked completely shattered. "Mom, what are you doing?" Rihanna stood up. She towered over them, not in physical height, but in the sheer, undeniable weight of her presence. The tired, accommodating mother was dead. The matriarch had arrived. "I am doing exactly what you forced me to do, Marcus," Rihanna said, her voice ringing with absolute clarity. "I am cutting out the infection." She pointed a finger at Chloe, who was shrinking into her chair. "You thought I was a senile countrywoman you could bully. You thought my love for Maya was a leash you could yank whenever you needed cash. You are a fraud, Chloe. A cheap, hollow fraud living on stolen money to impress strangers on the internet. And if you ever try to weaponize my granddaughter against me again, I will have Elias file a grand theft and elder exploitation suit so fast, your aesthetic brand will be broadcasting from a county jail cell." Chloe opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She looked at Mr. Sterling, who was frantically shoving his papers back into his briefcase, desperately trying to distance himself from the disaster. Rihanna turned her gaze to her son. The heartbreak was still there, a deep, bleeding wound in her chest, but she didn't let it show. "And you," Rihanna whispered. The softness of her voice was more devastating than a scream. "I gave up my youth for you. I gave up the land your great-grandfather bled for. I gave you everything I had. And you brought a stranger into my house to steal the rest and call me crazy." "Mom, please," Marcus begged, tears finally spilling over his cheeks. "We can fix this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "You aren't sorry you did it, Marcus. You're sorry you got caught," Rihanna said coldly. She pointed toward the front door. "Get out." "Mom?" "Get out of my house." Rihanna's voice cracked like a whip, echoing off the walls. "Take your fake mediator. Take your wife and get out of my home. The financial drip is completely severed. You will pay your own mortgage. You will fund your own lives. If either of you sets foot on my property again, Beatrice will call the police, and Elias will file the lawsuit. Do you understand me?" Marcus looked at his mother. He searched her eyes for the soft, yielding woman who had always bailed him out of trouble, the woman who had always put his comfort above her own survival. He found nothing but iron. Defeated, Marcus stood up. He grabbed Chloe by the arm, dragging her up as well. Sterling was already practically sprinting for the front door. Without another word, Marcus and Chloe walked out of the house. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind them, leaving behind a profound, ringing silence. Rihanna stood at the head of the table for a long moment. Her chest heaved. Her hands, which had been so steady during the confrontation, finally began to tremble. Beatrice walked over and wrapped her arms tightly around Rihanna's shoulders. Elias quietly began packing the documents away, giving the two women a moment of privacy. Rihanna leaned into her oldest friend's embrace. She didn't cry. She had saved herself. She had protected her home. The war was officially declared, and she had won the first massive battle. But as the smell of the untouched Sunday roast wafted through the air, Rihanna knew the hardest part wasn't fighting her son. The hardest part was going to be learning how to live in a world where she no longer had one. The week following the disastrous Sunday dinner was remarkably quiet. It was not the peaceful quiet of a resolved conflict, but the tense, heavy silence of a battlefield just before the artillery begins to fire. Rihanna spent her days tending to the azaleas in her front yard, reading novels she had put off for years, and drinking her morning coffee on the porch without checking her phone for emergencies. She had expected a barrage of angry text messages. She had anticipated Marcus showing up on her lawn, begging or shouting. But the financial umbilical cord had been severed cleanly, and the shock seemed to have paralyzed them both. However, in the digital world, the war was already raging. On Thursday morning, Beatrice marched into Rihanna's kitchen, holding her smartphone like a loaded weapon. "You need to see this," Beatrice said, sliding the phone across the counter. "Miss Aesthetic has decided to take her performance to the public stage." Rihanna picked up the phone. It was an Instagram reel from Chloe. She was sitting on the floor of her pristine beige living room, wearing an oversized, neutral-toned sweatshirt that swallowed her frame, making her look fragile and vulnerable. She wore no makeup, though the lighting was carefully positioned to catch the single tear rolling down her cheek. "Hi, guys." Chloe's voice trembled perfectly on the recording. "I've been quiet lately, and I just wanted to be vulnerable with you all. Mental health in families is so hard to navigate. Recently, Marcus and I had to make the agonizing decision to set some extremely hard boundaries with a toxic family member, someone who is struggling with severe cognitive issues but refuses to get help, and instead has become financially abusive and erratic toward us." Chloe sniffled, wiping her eye with the sleeve of her oversized sweater. "As a mother, my first job is to protect Maya's peace. It breaks my heart because we have done everything. We even built a space in our new home for this person. But you cannot pour from an empty cup. Please pray for our family during this incredibly dark season of transition." Rihanna watched the video twice. The comments beneath it were a chorus of blind sympathy. "Stay strong, Mama. Setting boundaries is self-care. So sorry you're dealing with toxic boomers." "She's spinning the narrative," Beatrice noted, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "She's broke, Rihanna. Her credit is frozen, Marcus's accounts are drained, and she needs to maintain engagement on her page to keep her sponsorships. She's monetizing your supposed insanity." Rihanna set the phone down. A younger version of herself would have been devastated, desperate to comment, to defend her name, to scream the truth to the thousands of strangers judging her. But the woman standing in the kitchen merely felt a profound, exhausting pity. "Let her perform," Rihanna said quietly. "A lie that big requires constant upkeep. Eventually, the scaffolding is going to collapse." Rihanna didn't know how prophetic her words would be. The collapse happened exactly 48 hours later, and it did not begin on the internet. It began on Rihanna's front porch. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon. The doorbell rang, a sharp, intrusive sound that cut through the low rumble of thunder. Rihanna opened the door, expecting the mail carrier. Instead, she found a burly man in a damp windbreaker holding a thick manila envelope sealed with red tape. "Rihanna Richter?" the man asked, his tone strictly business. "Yes, that's me." "Are you the homeowner of this residence?" "I am." The man held out a clipboard. "I need a signature to confirm delivery. I have a summons for a Mr. Marcus Richter. According to county records and recent credit applications, this is still listed as his primary legal mailing address for financial disclosures." A cold spike of dread shot through Rihanna's chest. "My son hasn't lived here in 10 years. That may be, ma'am, but he used this address as collateral verification, the man said smoothly. He handed her the envelope. You have been legally served on his behalf. The man turned and jogged back to his sedan, leaving Rihanna standing in the doorway, the heavy envelope burning in her hands. She walked into the dining room, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She didn't call Marcus. She called Elias Vance. 20 minutes later, Elias was sitting at her table, carefully slicing open the envelope with a silver letter opener. He extracted a thick stack of legal filings, his eyes scanning the dense paragraphs. As he read, the professional neutrality on his face slowly melted into a grim, dark scowl. Elias? Rihanna prompted, her voice tight. What did he do? Elias let out a heavy sigh, taking off his glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. Mrs. Richter, when we traced the $50,000 you transferred to Marcus, we assumed it went toward the down payment of the Alpharetta house, and that Chloe had simply diverted other funds to build her closet. Yes, that's what he told me. He lied, Elias said plainly. He turned the document around so Rihanna could see the bold, capitalized letters at the top. Notice of default and impending litigation. This is from a high-risk private lending firm, Elias explained, his voice low and serious. The kind of firm that operates just on the edge of legality. Marcus didn't use your $50,000 for a house. He used it to pay off a fraction of a massive cascading debt. Rihanna felt the room tilt slightly. She gripped the edge of the table. Debt from what? His logistics job pays well? They make enough. Sports betting, Elias said. The words hit the air like a physical blow. Offshore accounts, DraftKings, high-stakes fantasy leagues. According to this filing, Marcus took out a $75,000 high-interest loan using a fabricated collateral statement, listing your home address, to cover his gambling losses. He is currently in default for over $82,000 after interest and penalties. Rihanna couldn't breathe. The air in her lungs felt like glass. Gambling. The late-night phone calls where he sounded frantic. The constant gnawing requests for emergencies. The refusal to let her see the Alpharetta house immediately because he was desperately trying to secure a shady adjustable-rate mortgage with a bare minimum down payment, hiding the fact that her money was already gone. The Alpharetta house, Rihanna whispered, connecting the horrifying dots. If he didn't use my money for the down payment, how did they buy it? Subprime lending, Elias replied grimly. An adjustable-rate mortgage with a balloon payment they likely can never afford. And if this private lending firm is serving notices, it means the mortgage company is probably right behind them. Marcus isn't just broke, Rihanna. He is financially radioactive. He is facing total ruin. Rihanna stared at the papers. The anger she had felt over the closet vanished, replaced by a deep, terrifying abyss of maternal horror. Her son was an addict. He had gambled away his family's legacy, his wife's security, and his daughter's future on football games and basketball spreads. He had looked his mother in the eye, taken her grandfather's blood money, and handed it over to bookies to save his own skin. What happens now? She asked, her voice hollow. Now, Elias said, packing the papers into his briefcase, the House of Cards falls, because if these process servers came here, it means they are also visiting his office, and they are absolutely visiting the Alpharetta house. The explosion Elias predicted happened on Tuesday. It was public record, easily accessible through the Fulton County Court docket online. Beatrice, who had been monitoring the county filings like a hawk, brought the printed page to Rihanna's porch. Chloe A. Richter versus Marcus D. Richter. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Chloe had filed for divorce. She didn't even wait for the ink to dry on the default notice, Beatrice said, shaking her head in disgust. The moment she found out the money was gone and the house was facing pre-foreclosure, she abandoned ship. Rihanna read the petition. Chloe was not just filing for divorce. She was seeking full, sole legal and physical custody of Maya, citing Marcus's reckless endangerment and severe gambling addiction. She was petitioning the court to assign the entirety of the marital debt to Marcus, claiming she had been completely ignorant of his financial infidelity. She was painting herself as the ultimate victim, a devoted mother deceived by a degenerate husband. She's terrified, Rihanna noted, recognizing the sheer panic beneath the legalese. Her entire brand is built on being a wealthy, perfect suburban wife. If the public finds out she's being evicted and her husband is a gambling addict, she loses her sponsorships. She loses her income. She's throwing him to the wolves to save herself. Well, they deserve each other, Beatrice muttered. But what about Maya? Rihanna asked, the sharp ache returning to her chest. She's 6 years old, Beatrice. She's in the middle of a war zone. If Chloe takes her, she'll just use her as a prop to garner sympathy online. Elias is monitoring the custody filings, Beatrice assured her. But right now, Rihanna, you need to stay out of the blast radius. A drowning person will pull down anyone who tries to save them. Rihanna knew Beatrice was right, but the instinct to protect her son, even the broken, lying, addicted version of him, tugged painfully at her soul. She spent the night pacing her hallway, listening to the grandfather clock tick, wondering if she should call him, wondering if there was a way to shield Maya from the wreckage. But before Rihanna could make a decision, Chloe made her final, most desperate move. It happened on a Thursday morning, exactly 2 weeks after the disastrous Sunday dinner. Rihanna was in her kitchen, humming softly to a Motown record, chopping vegetables for a stew. Through the window, she saw a plain, white, unmarked sedan pull up to her curb. A woman in a sharp blazer holding a thick clipboard stepped out. She did not look like a salesperson, and she certainly did not look like a friend. When the doorbell rang, Rihanna wiped her hands on her apron and opened the door. "Rihanna Richter?" the woman asked. She flashed a laminated ID badge. "My name is Sarah Higgins. I am an investigator with the Georgia Division of Aging Services, Adult Protective Services Unit." Rihanna felt a chill run down her spine, freezing her in place. "Adult Protective Services?" "Yes, ma'am," Ms. Higgins said, her face an unreadable mask of professional concern. "We received an urgent, anonymous report regarding your welfare. The report alleges that you are suffering from rapid-onset dementia, that you are exhibiting severe paranoia, hoarding behavior, and that you are living in unsanitary, unsafe conditions due to an inability to care for yourself. I need to come inside and conduct an immediate welfare check." The sheer, unadulterated evil of the tactic left Rihanna momentarily speechless. Anonymous report. It was Chloe. It had to be. Facing a messy divorce, massive debt, and the loss of her home, Chloe had weaponized the state government against a perfectly healthy woman. If APS deemed Rihanna incompetent, the state could appoint a temporary guardian, and Chloe, legally still her daughter-in-law, could petition the court to be that guardian, gaining immediate access to Rihanna's pension and the equity in her home to fund her divorce lawyers and maintain her lifestyle. It was a vicious Hail Mary pass from a desperate woman. Rihanna took a deep breath. She didn't panic. She didn't yell. The 40 years in the trauma ward kicked in. "Please, Ms. Higgins, come in," Rihanna said smoothly, stepping aside and gesturing into her immaculately clean foyer. The social worker stepped inside, her eyes immediately darting around, searching for the squalor she had been briefed to expect. Instead, she found gleaming hardwood floors, the scent of fresh lemon polish, and the comforting aroma of a simmering vegetable stew. "We can sit in the dining room," Rihanna offered. "Would you like a cup of tea or a glass of water?" "Water is fine, thank you," Ms. Higgins said, her rigid posture softening just a fraction as she took in the pristine environment. Rihanna brought 2 glasses of ice water and sat across from the investigator. "Higgins, I know exactly who made that anonymous phone call, and I am going to save you a great deal of time." Rihanna reached into the sideboard and pulled out a heavy 3-ring binder Elias Vance had helped her prepare exactly for this kind of escalation. She slid it across the table. "What is this?" Ms. Higgins asked. "That is my medical and financial portfolio," Rihanna stated clearly. "Tab 1 contains a comprehensive cognitive evaluation performed last Wednesday by Dr. Aris Thorne, a board-certified neurologist at Emory Hospital. I scored in the 99th percentile for cognitive function. Tab 2 contains my bank statements, showing all bills paid in full and on time. Tab 3 contains a legal letter from my attorney, Elias Vance, detailing a documented history of elder financial exploitation committed against me by my son and daughter-in-law." Ms. Higgins opened the binder. As she flipped through the neurologist's report, the bank statements, and Elias's sharp legal summary, the investigator's eyes widened. She looked up at Rihanna, then around the spotless dining room, and finally back to the binder. "Mrs. Richter," Ms. Higgins said, her professional mask dropping to reveal genuine shock and sympathy. "The report stated you were hallucinating and leaving the stove on for days. The report was made by a woman who is currently facing bankruptcy, foreclosure, and a bitter divorce because her husband gambled away $80,000. Rihanna replied evenly. She is trying to swat me with your agency so she can petition for emergency guardianship over my assets. She needs money, Ms. Higgins, and she is perfectly willing to destroy my life to get it." The investigator closed the binder with a sharp snap. "Filing a false report to Adult Protective Services as an intimidation tactic or a financial maneuver is a severe offense, Mrs. Richter. It wastes state resources and endangers actual vulnerable seniors." "I am aware," Rihanna said, "and I give you my full blessing to investigate the origin of that phone call to the fullest extent of the law." Ms. Higgins stood up, extending her hand. "Mrs. Richter, I am so sorry for this intrusion. It is glaringly obvious that you are not only completely competent, but incredibly prepared. I will be closing this file as unfounded and maliciously reported before I even get back to my car." "Thank you, Ms. Higgins. Be safe out there in the rain." Rihanna watched from the window as the unmarked sedan drove away. The attack had been deflected effortlessly, but the psychological toll was immense. Chloe had tried to strip her of her human rights, to lock her away in a bureaucratic nightmare, all for a few $1,000s. The war had crossed a line. They weren't just fighting over money anymore. They were fighting over Rihanna's right to exist freely. She walked over to her phone and dialed Elias's number. He answered on the second ring. "Elias," Rihanna said, her voice dropping into a register of absolute, terrifying calm. "They just sent Adult Protective Services to my house to declare me incompetent." Elias swore loudly on the other end of the line. "Are you okay? Do I need to come over?" "I handled it. The investigator closed the case," Rihanna said. "But the time for playing defense is over. Chloe has declared total war. Marcus has jeopardized my granddaughter's safety with a gambling ring. I am done waiting for them to destroy themselves." "What do you want to do, Rihanna?" Rihanna looked out the window at the pouring rain, her dark eyes flashing with a fierce, protective fire. "I want to go on the offensive. I want to sue Chloe for the $50,000 she fraudulently diverted. I want to secure emergency custody of Maya, and I want to watch their false kingdom burn to the ground. Draw up the papers, Elias. We are going to court." The storm that had been brewing over the Richter family finally broke on a Tuesday night at 11 p.m. Rihanna was in her living room, folding laundry while a late-night talk show murmured in the background, when the heavy thud of a fist hitting her front door shattered the quiet. It wasn't the polite, measured knock of a delivery driver or a neighbor. It was frantic, desperate. She walked to the foyer, checking the security monitor Beatrice had insisted on installing a week prior. Standing on her porch, soaked to the bone from the freezing Georgia rain, was Marcus. He looked entirely broken. The tailored quarter-zip sweaters and the arrogant posture were gone. His eyes were sunken, his shoulders hunched, and he was clutching a sleek silver laptop to his chest as if it were a life preserver. Rihanna unlatched the deadbolt and pulled the door open. She didn't step aside to let him in. "Mom," Marcus choked out, his teeth chattering. "Please, I have nowhere else to go. The bank locked the accounts. The private lenders showed up at my office today. I lost my job, Mom. They fired me." Rihanna looked at her only son, the boy she had bled for. She felt a profound, crushing sadness, but the iron wall she had built around her heart held firm. "I told you, Marcus. The financial drip is severed. I will not pay your bookies." "I don't want your money," Marcus sobbed, the rain mixing with his tears. "I know I'm dead in the water. I know I might go to jail for the loan fraud. But Mom, Chloe is trying to pin all of it on me. She filed for sole custody. She told the judge she had no idea about the debt, that she didn't know where the $50,000 came from. She's going to take Maya away and I'll never see her again." Rihanna's eyes narrowed. "Chloe didn't know?" A bitter, hollow laugh escaped Marcus's throat. "She knew everything. When my credit tanked because of the DraftKings losses, the mortgage company demanded a higher down payment. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. But Chloe is the one who drafted the fake contractor invoices. She's the one who gave me the script to beg you for the $50,000. She knew we were using your money to cover the margin calls so we could close on the house. And now she's playing the innocent victim to save her brand." Marcus held out the silver laptop. His hands were shaking violently. "Her old MacBook," Marcus whispered. "It's all on here. The forged invoices, the emails to the high-risk lenders, her text messages to her PR manager planning to lock you in a conservatorship to get your pension. She forgot to wipe the hard drive before she kicked me out. Take it. Give it to Elias. Just, please, Mom, Use it to make sure she doesn't get full control of Maya. Don't let her turn my daughter into an Instagram prop." Rihanna looked into the laptop. It was the smoking gun Elias had been praying for, the ultimate proof of premeditated wire fraud and perjury. She reached out and took the cold metal device from his hands. "You did a terrible thing, Marcus," Rihanna said softly, the sorrow finally leaking into her voice. "You sold my grandfather's legacy, and you sold your own soul. I cannot save you from the consequences of your addiction. You will have to face the law." Marcus hung his head, sobbing into his hands. "I know. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." "But," Rihanna continued, her voice gaining a steely edge, "I will not let that woman take my granddaughter down with her. You made your bed. Now go find a lawyer." She closed the door, locking it with a sharp click. She carried the laptop to the dining room table, immediately dialing Elias. The trap was finally fully loaded. 2 days later, the air inside Elias Vance's law office crackled with electric anticipation. "It's a masterpiece of digital arrogance," Elias said, pointing to the glowing screen of the MacBook. Beatrice leaned over his shoulder, shaking her head in disgust. Elias had brought in a forensic data specialist to extract the files. Chloe had left a trail a mile wide. There were PDFs of the fake plumbing and foundation estimates she had mocked up to justify the $50,000 request. There were chat logs with her PR team discussing how to frame Marcus's impending mental breakdown to gain sympathy online. Worst of all, there was the digital footprint proving she was the one who submitted the anonymous false report to Adult Protective Services. She perjured herself in her divorce filings by claiming ignorance of the fraud, Elias noted, tapping a heavy pen against his legal pad. "She committed wire fraud by orchestrating the theft of your $50,000, and she committed a felony by filing a false APS report against a senior citizen. Mrs. Richter, we don't just have enough to sue her in civil court. We have enough to send this to the district attorney." "Then we send it," Rihanna said, sitting perfectly upright in the leather guest chair. "But first I want my money back. Or at the very least, I want the world she bought with my money to know exactly who she is." Beatrice pulled out her phone, a wicked, triumphant smile spreading across her face. "Well, if you want an audience, sister, tonight is the night. Miss Chloe is hosting the official launch party for her new Soft Life Motherhood brand at the W Hotel in Buckhead. She's desperately trying to secure venture capital investors before her house goes into foreclosure. She's invited every major lifestyle influencer and boutique investor in Atlanta." Rihanna looked at Beatrice, then at Elias. A deep, resonant calm washed over her. The woman who had cried over a canceled wedding dress, who had eaten oatmeal to pay for lip fillers, was entirely gone. "Elias," Rihanna said, standing up and smoothing the front of her slacks, "do you have the civil lawsuit and the fraud exhibits printed and bound?" "Sealed in a formal dossier," Elias smiled, patting a thick leather-bound folder on his desk. "Excellent," Rihanna said. "Beatrice, call a car. I believe it is time I finally supported my daughter-in-law's business ventures." The penthouse ballroom of the W Hotel was draped in the suffocating aesthetics of modern internet fame. Everything was beige, blush pink, and brushed gold. Massive displays of imported pampas grass framed a stage where a sleek podium stood. Waiters in crisp white shirts circulated with trays of expensive champagne, bought with the very last drops of Chloe's maxed-out credit. The room was buzzing with Atlanta's elite digital class, investors in sharp suits, influencers holding vlogging cameras, and PR managers networking furiously. At the center of it all was Chloe. She wore an immaculate, flowing white silk dress, looking every bit the resilient, serene mother she sold herself to be. She was holding court with a group of 3 venture capitalists, laughing musically and gently touching her collarbone as she pitched her authentic motherhood lifestyle app. The elevator doors at the back of the ballroom opened with a soft ding. Rihanna stepped out. She did not look like a confused, erratic senior citizen. She looked like a queen. She wore a tailored emerald green suit that Beatrice had helped her pick out from a high-end boutique that morning. Her silver hair was styled perfectly, her posture immaculate. Flanking her were Beatrice, radiating protective fury, and Elias Vance, carrying his trademark leather briefcase. They moved through the crowd. They didn't push or shove. The sheer gravity of their presence caused the sea of influencers and investors to naturally part. Whispers began to ripple through the room as people noticed the sharp contrast between the beige aesthetic and the striking trio moving toward the center. Chloe looked up from her conversation. Her musical laugh died in her throat. The color drained from her perfectly contoured face so fast it looked as if she might faint. She instinctively took a step back, her champagne flute trembling in her hand. "Excuse me," Chloe whispered to the investors, her voice cracking. She practically sprinted toward Rihanna, desperate to intercept her before she reached the center of the room. "What are you doing here?" Chloe hissed under her breath as she approached, her eyes darting around wildly to see who was watching. "You are not on the guest list. You need to leave right now, Rihanna, or I will call security and have you dragged out for trespassing." Rihanna didn't stop walking until she was standing directly in the center of the ballroom, right next to the stage. The music seemed to lower. The chatter in the room died down as the crowd sensed the sudden, icy shift in the atmosphere. "I don't think you want to do that, Chloe," Rihanna said. Her voice was not a shout. It was beautifully modulated, projecting across the quiet room with the clear, unshakable resonance of absolute truth. "After all, as the primary financier of your lifestyle, I believe I am entitled to attend your launch." The three venture capitalists Chloe had just been pitching exchanged confused glances and stepped closer. "Mama Ree, please, you're having an episode," Chloe said, loudly enough for the investors to hear, desperately trying to deploy her gaslighting tactics in public. "Let's get you home. You're confused." "I am not confused, Chloe. I am collecting," Rihanna replied smoothly. She turned slightly, addressing the room, her voice commanding the attention of every camera and investor present. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rihanna announced, her tone polite but deadly. "My name is Rihanna Richter. I am a retired nurse, a widow, and the mother-in-law of your host tonight. I understand Chloe is seeking capital to fund her brand based on authentic motherhood. I felt it was my duty to provide you with the full financial disclosures of her previous ventures." Chloe lunged forward, her pristine white dress tangling around her legs. "Stop it! Shut up!" Elias Vance stepped smoothly between Chloe and Rihanna, blocking the younger woman effortlessly. He unlatched his briefcase and pulled out the thick, leather-bound dossier. "Mrs. Chloe Richter," Elias said, his booming courtroom voice echoing off the high ceilings. "You are officially served. This is a civil lawsuit filed in the Superior Court of Fulton County for $50,000 in wire fraud, civil conspiracy, and conversion of assets." Elias handed the heavy folder directly to Chloe. She took it automatically, her hands shaking so violently she nearly dropped it. The ballroom erupted into a frenzy of gasps and furious whispering. Several influencers immediately raised their phones, recording the scene. "Inside that folder," Rihanna continued, looking directly into Chloe's terrified, wide eyes, "you will find the forged contractor invoices you created on your MacBook to steal my grandfather's inheritance. You will find the proof that you knew your husband was embezzling funds to pay offshore bookies, a fact you committed perjury to hide in your divorce filings on Tuesday. And finally, you will find the digital metadata proving you were the one who filed a malicious, anonymous report to Adult Protective Services, attempting to have me declared legally incompetent so you could steal my pension." A collective gasp swept through the room. The venture capitalists who had been smiling at Chloe moments ago took several large physical steps away from her, looking at her as if she were radioactive. In the business world, a messy divorce was one thing. Forgery, perjury, and elder abuse were corporate suicide. "You're lying," Chloe sobbed, tears ruining her expensive makeup. "You stole my laptop. You hacked me." "The district attorney will be reviewing the laptop on Monday," Elias noted dryly. "I suggest you retain criminal defense counsel immediately. Your PR agency won't be able to spin a felony indictment." Rihanna stepped closer to Chloe. She looked at the woman who had treated her like an ATM, who had tried to lock her away in a mental prison, who had threatened to keep her granddaughter from her. "You thought because I am old. I am weak," Rihanna said softly, meant only for Chloe's ears. "You thought because I loved my son, I was blind. You built a kingdom on glass, Chloe, and I just threw the stone." Rihanna didn't wait for a response. She didn't gloat. She simply turned her back on the wreckage. With Beatrice on her right and Elias on her left, Rihanna walked out of the ballroom. Behind her, the sounds of Chloe's desperate, hysterical sobbing were drowned out by the frantic clicking of cameras and the rapid departure of every investor in the room. The illusion was dead. The truth had finally spoken. 6 months later, the afternoon sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 32nd-floor luxury condominium in Midtown Atlanta. The view of the city's skyline was breathtaking, a sprawling sea of glass, steel, and green canopy. Rihanna sat at a sleek, mahogany dining table, signing the final page of a towering stack of legal documents. "And that's the final signature," Elias Vance said, stamping the document with his notary seal. "The Maya Richter Irrevocable Educational and Living Trust is officially fully funded and legally sealed." Rihanna set the pen down, a profound, weightless relief washing over her. The fallout from the launch party had been swift and absolute. Chloe's brand imploded overnight. Facing undeniable evidence of fraud and perjury, her divorce lawyer dropped her. To avoid criminal prosecution for the APS report and the wire fraud, Chloe was forced to agree to a brutal settlement. She had to surrender the Alpharetta house to the bank, move back into her parents' cramped basement in Ohio, and relinquish all claims to the remaining assets. Marcus hadn't fared much better. The private lenders had wiped him out. He was currently serving a 3-year probationary sentence for loan fraud and was living in a court-mandated halfway house, attending daily Gamblers Anonymous meetings. But out of the ashes, Rihanna had secured the only thing that truly mattered. She had petitioned the family court for emergency guardianship of Maya. Given the financial and legal ruin of both parents, the judge had granted it swiftly. Rihanna had sold her old house in the suburbs, the house filled with ghosts and bad memories, and used the equity to move into this secure, beautiful high-rise in the city. The trust she had just signed ensured that Maya's future was bulletproof. The money was locked tight. Neither Marcus nor Chloe could touch a single dime of it, even if they begged. "You did it, Rihanna," Beatrice said, walking out from the open-concept kitchen carrying 2 glasses of expensive Pinot Noir. "You saved your granddaughter and you saved yourself." Elias packed his briefcase, giving Rihanna a warm, respectful nod. "I will file these with the county in the morning. Enjoy your evening, ladies. You've earned it." After Elias left, Rihanna walked out onto the expansive glass balcony. The city hummed far below, a river of light and life. Maya was asleep in her beautiful new bedroom down the hall, safe, loved, and protected. Beatrice handed her a glass of wine. "To the matriarch," Beatrice toasted, clinking her glass against Rihanna's. "To freedom," Rihanna corrected softly. She took a sip of the wine. It tasted rich and complex. She looked down at her hands. They were still the calloused, tired hands of a nurse. They were still the hands that had weathered heartbreak, loss, and the ultimate betrayal. But they were no longer tied to the heavy, suffocating chains of unrequited sacrifice. Some nights, the grief of losing her son to his own demons still ached in her chest. A mother's heart never truly stops mourning the child she thought she raised. But as Rihanna watched the sun dip below the Atlanta skyline, painting the clouds in brilliant shades of gold and violet, she knew the woman she used to be, the fearful, accommodating victim, was gone forever. In her place stood a woman who knew the ultimate truth, that love should never be a transaction, that dignity is not for sale, and that sometimes the most profound act of love a mother can commit is walking away to protect the ones who truly matter. Rihanna took another sip of wine, leaned against the glass railing, and let the cool evening breeze wash over her. For the first time in her 68 years, the future belonged entirely to her.